Hey everyone, welcome to another recording session of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I'm Paul Lathrop. I am the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me tonight, to my right, Charlie Cook, writing shotgun with Charlie, Charlie's Gungrams, and all kinds of good stuff all over the place. Below me, John Richardson. He's, of course, the Only Guns and Money blog. Guys, we're getting... let me go ahead and get social media set up while we're just getting started here. To let everybody know, if you're watching on the Polite Society Podcast Facebook or YouTube page, you can comment on those. We'll get those comments up and get them on the air. And... let me see here. Yep, that's good. And we're already getting comments coming in. John Petrolino is already checking in, as well as Robert Poserina. So, very cool. So, again, if you want to get your comments in, go to Facebook or YouTube feeds, and you can comment there. We'll get your comments up, discuss them on the air, as long as you're talking about what we're talking about, which is usually guns. And maybe even if you're not talking about what we're talking about, we still might pop it up there. Guys, I think I'm ready on my end. Are we... I got to find where I put damn show notes at. There we are. Move these guys over here so I can see them. And put that one in the foreground. All right, I do believe we're ready to go. Mm-hmm. All right, Massad Ayoob in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Massad Ayoob from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, the 22nd of May, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm John Richardson, and on tonight's show, we will talk about some good news from New Jersey, for once.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about a couple DGUs from Texas. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 662 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night at 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. So that means it's time for another edition of the Polite Society podcast. Usually we start with Rob. Rob is traveling back from Arizona today, so could not join us. But do check tomorrow. He'll be on the Bullet. He'll be back and ready to go for that. So if you're looking for Rob, join us tomorrow, same time. So, John, what's been going on in your world since the last time we were on the air, man?
Well, it's been a fairly quiet week. Went to the doctor for annual checkup. That's about it. Gun-related stuff I accomplished this week. I finally found some once-fired .257 Roberts brass at an auction, which, knock on wood, I won at a reasonable price. It used to be pretty plentiful in the past. It's pretty hard to find nowadays. I also picked up a new old stock Galco shoulder holster, shades of Miami Vice, at a quarter of the price of retail. So I was real pleased with that one. I got to stay away from auctions. I spend too much money at them. How about you, Charlie?
Been to any auctions, Charlie?
No auctions for me, I'll tell you that. Although I love being tactically frugal, so that is great. I'm happy for that. The .257 Roberts, is this for the Africa trip?
No. I had finally picked up one of my Grail guns, which was which actually is not a 257 Roberts, but a 257 Ackley improved. It can use 257 Roberts, or once you fire the Roberts ammo in the gun, it becomes Ackley improved. It just fire forms. So it's something I've wanted since I was 22 years old, and I finally got it.
Very cool. Very cool.
A lot of years ago. Let's put it that way.
Right. Oh man, so it's been a while for me since I've been on. I've had the last few Mondays doing some of the gun law listening tours. I did a show last week with our buddy Derek LeBlanc from the Kids Safe Foundation. He's doing I think listen and learn, I think is what he's calling it. I've had a couple of gun classes, and I have been going to speaking up. I've been going to and speaking up at and writing about the gun law listening tours that we're having here in Massachusetts. And there's been, I think there's been 6 of them. I've made it to 4, and I've spoken at 3. And there was only one that was, I'm going to use air quotes when I say good, because it wasn't necessarily good. It just wasn't as bad. And that was a few weeks ago. The last one they had was on ghost guns, which I can't say with a straight face, so I just call them DIY guns. And so I've been doing that. I'm actually going to 2 more of those this week. The most recent Armed Lifestyle magazine came out, and my Writing Shotgun with Charlie article has to do with Beth Alcazar and her new book on gun safety and fundamentals for children, which is pretty cool. Paul, you've had some cool stuff this weekend as well.
Yeah, on Saturday we had we've decided we're going to make this twice a year. We haven't set the date for later this year yet, but we had our open range day, which is where we put out the word. We try to get new shooters to come out, and us and a bunch of our friends bring out everything from the Smith & Wesson 422 .22 caliber handgun to our really fun stuff, and we all bring it all to the range. We focus on trying to get new people to shoot, and I got to help teach a couple of brand new shooters to shoot. Yeah, there are people in South Dakota who have never shot before. I got to help teach a couple people to learn to shoot this past Saturday. Just had an absolute wonderful afternoon. And then, of course, I got to try out some really fun stuff that I hadn't shot before, and really had a wonderful time. One of the ones that Matt from the Geets, Gadgets, and Guns podcast brought up and specifically said, you need to try this before you leave. So he lassoed me, brought me up to the rifle range. I'd spend most of my morning down at the handgun range. And I got to shoot a Ruger 10/22, no big shock there, suppressed, firing subsonic ammo, and it had a binary trigger. And the fun meter absolutely pegged. It was that was more fun than any one person should be allowed to have.
That is cool.
A lot
Absolutely.
of other unique and interesting stuff that I was able to shoot, including one. Didn't know there was a thing. It was a Tabor chambered in .308, and that thing kicked like a mule. But yeah, I had just wonderful time hanging out with shooters and teaching new people. Just had a blast. So that's
great.
The one time it's often I'm so wrapped up in this, so wrapped up in that, I haven't been able to do any shooting. This is the one time I get to say, yeah, I got to fire a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So
that's great. Sometimes it's a little frustrating with all the stuff that we do, because we spend all this time writing and video and editing and podcasting and everything that we do, that we don't have time to get out and hit the range ourselves. So when I hear people that are going to hit the range, I'm like, what am I doing wrong that I don't have time for the range?
that's one of the reasons I wanted to turn this into twice a year. So it's guaranteed that I get out to the range twice a year and actually get some work done. So
Right.
you stay tuned. I'm sure the next few weeks we'll set up the date for the fall one, and I'll start plugging that here and there, because you really got to hammer these things to get. Let's face it, people that listen to the Polite Society podcast, they've pretty much made up their mind what side they're on already. We're doing a lot of preaching to the choir here, which is fine, and I think actually helps, because if we can help people communicate ideas better, we're getting things done. But we do a lot of preaching to the choir here, and I'm hoping, what I hope when I start plugging these things is some of the choir will run into some people, or maybe know some people, that are not exactly on our side and maybe open to it and ready to go shooting, and that then we get those people to come out, and I get to help again.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we do have a lot of news to get to, guys. So I think we're going to step off to our first break. First thing I got to do before we do that, I got to tell everybody about Self Defense Radio Network. All your pro freedom podcasts in one place. Of course, you can see our tagline right there. We're up on the top left. The viewers of the live show can see us up there on the top left. Right beside us, Self-Defense Gun Stories, and below us, Eye on the Target Radio, Rob and Amanda's respectively shows. Riding Shotgun with Charlie is right down there. All total right now, 15 shows on the network with more to come. We are going to step aside to our first break. We're going to hear from ACLDN. When we come back, we've got what John teased at the very open of the show. We've got good news out of New Jersey. We'll get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Before we get into the news, I got to get this comment up from Roderick over on the Facebook side. He says, Wednesday, I'll dedicate a few rounds for you, Charlie.
Well, thank you very much, Roderick. This is really funny. Wednesday, I'm done with my Wednesday school. So one of my buddies, Mark, has been reaching out to me for a solid year and a half, probably longer. And he's like, hey, man, let's go to the range. Hey, man, let's go to the range. Let's go to the range. I'm self-employed. I can go to the range anytime you want. He's like, I got a new Gen 5 Glock with a red dot on it. You should try it. I'm like, okay. Nothing. And so finally, I'm like, I need to get some range time in before the USCCA class I'm taking this weekend. So we've got a mandate to go to the range on Wednesday with my buddy Mark.
Very cool. Very cool. I didn't think Massachusetts let Gen 5 Glocks in, man. I thought you had to be Gen 1 or 2.
It's Gen 1/2. Yeah.
They allow the prototypes.
Exactly right. So this is it's so ridiculous. You cannot get a new gen. This is Jedi mind trick stuff. You cannot get a new Gen 5 from a dealer, but if you have a friend that's a police officer that wants to sell you his, that's okay. You can buy one that is I think you can get a used Gen 5 from a dealer as well. The other thing that people do are the frame transfers. So they can transfer. Yeah, I know. You guys look at me like I'm the crazy one here. Oh my gosh. So frame transfer is the frame isn't a firearm. So they can transfer the frame to you in one purchase, and then they can sell the magazine, barrel, and slide in a second purchase, and then you go home and put everything together.
All righty then.
Right.
So with one or two Form 4473s?
Well, we all know the slide, the barrel, and the magazine are not don't have serial numbers on them. So it's one 4473 for the frame, and then they just sell you the barrel, slide, and magazine, which are just parts without serial numbers on them.
Yeah, I have bought, when I was in my youth, I bought a motorcycle that was in boxes and actually got put back together and got it running. I'm hoping that doesn't come to the point where in Massachusetts you got 5, 6, 7 different purchases to get a working gun.
Right. It's just for the things that aren't on the approved weapons roster. It's like the Johnny Cash song, right? One piece at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57 automobile.
Have you done a gungram for that one yet?
I haven't. That'd be fun though. It's like trying to figure out how I could do that. That'd be fun.
All right, let's go ahead and get started on the news. First one, this actually is very good news, and it is about New Jersey. The good news is New Jersey lost. A federal judge in New Jersey on Tuesday granted a preliminary injunction in part against certain tenets of the New Garden State's revised gun permit law, Chapter 131, chalking up a win for the Second Amendment Foundation and its lawsuit partners. In her meticulously researched 235-page ruling, Chief U.S. District Court Judge Renee Marie Bum writes, the Constitution leaves the state some measure to combat handgun violence, but what the Second Amendment prohibits the states from doing, and what the state of New Jersey has done here with much of Chapter 131, is to prevent law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. That is plainly unconstitutional. That's from a SAF press release. I'm going to skip down to a quote from our executive director, Adam Kraut. He says, today's order granting our preliminary injunction against the state of New Jersey's anti-carry law affirms the rule of law is alive and well. After the Supreme Court decided Bruin last summer, the state of New Jersey enacted a series of restrictions that were wholly incompatible with the Constitution and disregarded the Supreme Court's directive. It is unfortunate that a lawsuit was required in order to force the state to respect its residents' constitutional right to keep and bear arms. We look forward to continuing to litigate these issues in New Jersey and across the nation to ensure constitutional rights are not meaningless words on paper. And these are some of the changes, some of the things that did get an injunction from Judge Bum, where the places where she ruled New Jersey went too far. You cannot carry, all private property is not carry unless posted to allow firearms. Public gatherings, demonstrations, or events requiring a government permit. Zoos, parks, beaches, recreational areas, and state parks, all these places you can now carry. Public libraries and museums, bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, entertainment facilities, casinos, medical offices, and ambulatory care facilities. Notice that did not say hospital. Public film sets, and the big one, in vehicles. I brought this up Saturday on the weekend edition of the Bullet. Look, if you can't carry in your vehicle in today's society, you can't carry. period. Nothing anywhere is within walking distance unless you really like walking. And it's that was one I absolutely love to see go away. Also, finally, the you have to have insurance to get a concealed carry permit. That's gone as well. Simply because we promote ACLDN every week. ACLDN is not insurance. I don't know of a single insurance company that does insure concealed carry. Either you guys want to, John, you're up in show notes here.
Yeah, I mean, the importance of Judge Bum's, there's two things. Number one, it's great for the people of New Jersey. And actually, she went further than I would have expected, and that is even better. Number two, even though it's not a precedent for other states like Maryland, California, New York, her decisions will be used elsewhere, and her reasoning will be presented in other courts to back up our argument when states go too far, and that is really good. It gives us more meat to put on the table. Charlie?
Yeah, you know what? That is a great point, John, because as Paul was reading through this, I had flashbacks of moments when Paul was reading through these 7 minutes of things where you cannot carry in New York.
Man. I'm sorry again, man. I'm sorry.
No worries. We get to laugh about it now, so that's totally cool. The nice thing about that is maybe, they're going to take this to New York and say, okay, well, all of these things are places we wanted to, that we wanted to do with the Concealed Carry Improvement Act. We can't do it, which would be a wonderful thing on the side of freedom, definitely. So getting back to, you can't, like you were saying, Paul, the carrying in your car is certainly a big issue, because if you're reloading, if you're taking the gun out of the holster and reloading it every place you go, you're more likely to have an accident. Not that you don't know how to do things safely, of course, but when you're in your car, there's not really a safe direction. When you're digging for your gun in your in and out of your pocket holster or inside your waistband, that's going to be a hassle inside of your car, because you're not going to do it outside of your car, because everyone's going to see that you're loading up a gun, and the anti-gun folks and the non-gun folks will think that you're loading up to go in to shoot up some store or mall that you're going to.
Yeah.
I mean, telling people they can't carry is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is part of something I've been saying for about a couple years. And when we were anticipating the Bruen ruling last summer, we didn't know what was coming. We knew it was probably going to be positive. We didn't know how positive it was going to be. It turned out to be incredibly positive. But I remember having Alan Gottlieb on the show and saying, look, no matter which way this goes, you cannot retire. And the SAF isn't closing down. We're going to have a lot of work to do, because we anticipated New York throwing up the Concealed Carry Improvement Act. And we anticipated New Jersey and California and Hawaii and a lot of other states putting up really nasty, bad laws to try and get around whatever ruling was coming. And so, and matter of fact, let me go into our next story, again from an SAF press release. The Second Amendment Foundation has filed a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of SB 1, a bill signed by Maryland Governor Wesley Moore, which has added new restrictions on where legally licensed citizens may carry firearms for personal protection. Joining the SAF are Maryland Shall Issue, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and 3 private citizens. SB 1 was enacted in response to the Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen last year. This from SAF founder Alan Gottlieb. Instead of trying to comply with the new guidelines set down in that decision, Maryland lawmakers scrambled to make gun laws more restrictive than they were before. Indeed, the additional restrictions make it nearly impossible to legally carry firearms for personal protection, even on public land. This is government regulation at its worst. And this from Adam Kraut. There's no well-established representative historical analog for the carry prohibitions included in SB 1, which appears to be in direct conflict with the Supreme Court's directive set forth in Bruin. The new law bans permitted carrying in facilities where alcohol is served, in healthcare facilities, even in museums. These restrictions are facially unconstitutional under the Second Amendment, forcing us to take this action in court. And now, John, I'm just going to throw this to you because you got something up in show notes that I think we're all thinking.
Yeah, I mean, what I just said about the previous case in New Jersey, the Maryland case goes directly to the point about the New Jersey decision being of help elsewhere. Judge Bum's decision will be quoted in I don't know if it's in our complaint to begin with, but it will come up in court. It will be cited as supplemental issues before the court. Here's more stuff for your decision. It helps. And, it's what we would expect out of Maryland, unfortunately. So much for being the free state.
Yeah. Well, it's as much the free state as New Jersey is the garden state. I don't know if anybody's ever been. If you've ever been to Elizabethtown, New Jersey, I challenge you to find a garden anywhere in Elizabethtown, or honestly, or Trenton. Anyway.
You could probably find some pot stores. Okay, that's a close.
Well, you see, they had to outlaw gardening because people get enjoyment out of gardening, and so
Right.
New Jersey is where fun goes to die.
Right. What do people enjoy? Don't do that.
Except gamble.
Yeah, they allow that. Anyway, let's go ahead. I love those two stories because just like John pointed out, they feed off each other so well. Pointing out real quickly, New Jersey's in the Third Circuit, and Maryland is in the Fourth Circuit. So Judge Bum's ruling doesn't directly apply to Maryland, but as John said, it's going to be brought up, and I'm kind of hoping that one goes one way, one goes the other way, so that we get a split, and it goes directly to the Supreme Court.
Well, you would be. You've got the New Jersey's in the Third Circuit, Maryland's in the Fourth Circuit, so you would have a split in the circuits. I just hope that the judge that is hearing the case is not the one who originally heard the assault weapons ban, where she said, "Oh, this looks evil. It must be military. We must ban it." Back, I'm trying to think the name of the case, but couple of 3 years ago.
Well, and we are Second Amendment Foundation's assault weapons ban case is still active and still going forward. So don't give up hope there, especially places like Maryland and honestly, California has a horrific assault weapons ban law, and I'm hoping that this gets kicked to Supreme Court and everywhere. These things are going to go down. I do want. This is not in show notes, guys. I just seen this as we were getting ready to go to air. AmmoLand has a story up that just hit a little over an hour and a half ago. Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals ordered expedited review in Illinois assault weapons and large magazine ban. I haven't had time to go through this a lot, but what I will say is if you don't subscribe to the Four Boxes Diner YouTube channel, you need to. It's explained there, and honestly, me not being an attorney, I don't get the minutia, the ins and outs that Mark he explains a lot of this stuff really well. So,
Yeah, following up on what you just said, Paul, I can't speak to the Nager case, but in the 4 cases that were in the Southern District of Illinois, they're now going up into the Seventh Circuit on appeal. Judge McGlynn's preliminary injunction. You had some heavy hitter attorneys in there. You had the people who did the Bruin decision. You had Chuck Michel from California, top-notch lawyer. You had Stephen. I almost said Steven Seagal, and I know that's not right.
David Siegel?
David Siegel.
Yeah.
Who helped with the McDonald case. So you've got some real top-notch attorneys on our side.
Real quickly, in this story that's up on AMOLAN, the 3-judge panel overseeing this case consists of Frank Easterbrook and Diane Wood, both known for their less than supportive stance on Second Amendment, and Michael Brennan, a Trump nomination, whose stance on this issue remains unclear. But yeah, the Seventh Circuit is really not holding back on this. It's going to be heard yet this month. So and part of that, it kind of we have a story here in the show notes that Amy Coney Barrett did say no, the Supreme Court is not directly going to hear that Illinois case. Part of the reason that she denied pulling the case out of the Seventh Circuit directly to the Supreme Court is that it was on a fast track, and it's even now on a faster track. But part of the reason she said that we're going to let this play out is the Seventh Circuit was moving quickly. It's now moving very quickly. So,
well, and I wouldn't blame Justice Barrett per se, because she punted it to the entire Supreme Court. So it was the court as a whole who made that decision, not her.
Right. And there were no dissents, even Justice Thomas did not dissent on not taking this case. So
yeah, and I'm going to say the reason that they probably didn't is they want to let it play out. They don't really like to take stuff at this stage. In the old days, they might have done abortion cases, but in this, they're going to let it play out.
Yeah, honestly, it's important they do that. We have a system there, and let the system work itself out. It took us 50 years of a bad ruling from the Supreme Court to get
Heller.
Yeah, to get abortion sent back to the states. It took 50 years, but there were multiple times throughout that the court flirted with it.
Took 80 years to get Heller.
Yeah,
or almost 80 years from Miller versus U.S. versus Miller to the Heller case. So
and now that we've got NYSERPA versus Bruin, I think honestly it hasn't even been a year yet since the Bruin ruling, and we've already got cases bouncing up and bouncing off the Supreme Court right now. I expect a lot more of them to be getting there. And even though the Supreme Court turns down most of the cases they're asked to look at, I don't see it being even another 3 years before we see a gun case getting to the Supreme Court, simply because we got so many bad laws that are being sued and moving up the legal ladder, so to speak. So. We got one more piece of good news here This one out of Nevada. Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo has vetoed all 3 gun bills placed on his desk. SB 171, AB 354, and AB 355 all passed the Nevada legislature this past Monday. A little bit about each of these bills. AB 355 would have raised the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21. In his veto of the bill, Lombardo said similar legislation has already been struck down by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on the ground that it is unconstitutional to bar people under 21 from possessing such firearms. And yeah, Nevada is in the Ninth Circuit. SB 171 would have prevented a person convicted of a hate crime from owning a firearm for a period of 10 years following the conviction. Lombardo stated that SB 171 would go much farther than existing laws on hate crimes and deprive individuals of the right to keep and bear arms. And AB 354 would have prevented the possession of a firearm within a certain distance of an election site. While he called the goals of the bill commendable, he said the scope of the bill is too broad and that there is no notable history of gun violence at election facilities in Nevada. And there are at least 2 cases here where it seems the Nevada governor, who is not exactly pro-gun, actually did a little bit of research on his own and figured out, look, this is just going to cost us money. We're going to lose these things in legal battles anyway. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should just stop it here.
Finally, some common sense from an anti-gun person.
Yeah.
Or a non-gun person.
Non-gun, yeah. And you mentioned hate crimes. That's always been kind of one of those, like, things to me is like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Mm-hmm.
And aren't most crimes hate crimes? I mean, murder, there's usually, unless you're a cold-blooded killer and you're just doing it because it gives you a thrill, somebody's killing somebody because they hate them or they're angry at them. Murder is murder.
Yeah.
Assault is assault.
We can't make them more illegal. I was thinking the same thing when they said hate crime. I'm like, oh, what's a hate crime? Saying that you don't like someone, saying that you don't agree with them. One of the guys that I like to listen to, not a gun guy, but he likes to say when his son was young, he said one of his buddies was bullying him at school. And he said, so what did he do to bully you at school? He said, I was talking to him and he put his fingers in his ears.
It's like the press misgendered the killer in Nashville at the Covenant School.
No, I correctly gendered her. I did. I correctly gendered her.
No, but I said the press.
Yeah.
I saw a video that somebody sent me, and it was one of the videos with stick figures, so I know we've all seen these on our social media feeds, but it's this guy that's robbing people, and there's a bunch of people on one side, there's the robber, and then there's a guy over here, and the guy with the robber's like, hey, give me all your money, give me all your stuff, and the other guy says, what, you're robbing everybody, just do what he says, we don't want him to rob us, he's just, he's taking our stuff, we don't want him to rob us anymore, and then the robber says, rob you? I'm not a robber. And he's like, I'm going to cancel you, and starts taking pictures of him. He's like, I identify as a pilot. You're like, what?
A pilot or a pirate?
I thought he said pilot. Maybe it was a pirate. That might make more sense. I know I got to go back and watch it.
Going back to the hate crime bill here, what sticks in my head is there are hate crimes in Nevada. There has to be, because I just reasoning in my brain. If you commit a felony, you are barred for life from buying firearms. Period. You're banned from possession. You're banned from everything. This new bill would have anybody convicted of a hate crime would have had a 10-year ban. That means that there are hate crimes that aren't felonies. And that just, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, when we really go down this rabbit hole of what is a hate crime hate crimes can only be there are certain people that cannot be victims of a hate crime. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're
an old bald white guy, you can't be a victim of a hate crime.
You got it. Even though the person might be doing what they're doing because they hate you and they hate what you represent and they hate whatever, your skin, your religion, your sexual preference. It seems to me like hate crimes can only be committed on certain groups, right? So if somebody robs a white guy, it's a crime, but if somebody robs a gay person, then it's a hate crime. Well, that person might not have known, the robber might not have known that what your sexual preference is. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So how can we identify what's a hate crime and what's not a hate crime? Other than like what you were saying, John, everything's a hate crime.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next story here. And this again, good news out of New Jersey. I got this off 943thepoint.com. The story is titled, "Can You Legally Shoot Trespassers in New Jersey?" Believe it or not, if you go, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to grab the URL and put it up in the comments on the Facebook and YouTube streams. But it's actually a very well written, very well reasoned, and balanced article from New Jersey. I've got late in the article, I've got one little piece I want to go through, and from the story, U.S. Law Shield says that New Jersey still wants you to warn the other party before using deadly force. He writes, "Listen, I know it's impossible to go through all these rules and regulations when you're in the moment. That's why if you own a firearm and keep it in your home, it's so very important to educate yourself on what it can and can't be used for." The big shock for me was a balanced article coming out of what is mostly mainstream media in New Jersey. And the other thing that stuck in my head is somebody's breaking into my house. "Mr. Bad Guy, please stop pointing that gun at me for just a moment while I warn you that I'm going to shoot you with my gun." That you'll never finish that sentence.
Right. I guess it's shocking too that it came from a radio station.
Yeah.
But I do like the picture that they have on the article here. I'm not even sure what kind of a revolver that is.
No, but they got it just as the gas was coming out the back end of it.
Right.
Timing.
Yeah, timing. Yeah. Timing is good for sure.
Well, I'm honestly, you get a high-speed camera, you can get that every time you fire a revolver. But it's same as the other one I like is if somebody has a camera and they happen to trigger it right at exactly the right time, and you get the action open, the casing coming out, that puff of smoke coming out the front of the handgun. Love those shots too. All right, let's see here.
Those are always cool.
All right, and by the way, we haven't got a whole lot of comments. Robert, your comment, I can't even remember what we were talking about when Robert put his comment in because I was off into reading. Robert made a comment only because it benefits the state. I don't know what he was referring to, but it could have fit in with a couple different things we were talking about. So, all right, let's take, guys, anything, because we're late, way late. Anything in the notes for news that you think is really important for us to talk about?
Just very quickly, the Illinois Democrats taking aim at the firearms industry.
Yeah.
Because if you look at if you design a firearm that would appeal or to use by or appeal to minors, Look at the shotguns with shorter stocks, which are for women and those of smaller stature. That would then become illegal. You got to get your own saw out, cut the stock down, rather than just getting a firearm that can grow with the child or the youth. And when you think about it, Illinois, the state of Illinois has, I think it's called, whatever it's called in Sparta, Illinois, which is where they hold the major trap and skeet shooting nationals, where it's like a line for trap and skeet that's 3 miles long, and then the state wants to do this. There's something wrong with them up in Springfield. Actually, Chicago, but...
Yeah. Dana, speaking of unique shots, he says, even better is a Civil War artillery that fire out the muzzle and out the vent hole on the top. Yeah, those are cool shots.
That is cool.
All right, let's go ahead and do this. We're gonna step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our DGUs as we talked about in the open. We've got 2 of them out of the state of Texas. So we're gonna step aside to our break, and we'll be right back with our DGU segment right after we hear from the Complete Combatant.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information and education, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Everybody gets a break now. I don't have to read these because Charlie is signed up to take the first one. Charlie, what do we got going on, man?
All right, here's what's going on in Houston, Texas. A daycare worker arrived at her place of employment at 6 a.m. prior to the center opening on a Monday morning. Unfortunately, her ex-boyfriend also arrived at the center at that early hour. The woman had previously told the owner of the center that he had been stalking her, and it was not known if a restraining order had been sought or calls of domestic violence were documented. With her that morning was also another man. The stalking ex-boyfriend shot her and shot the man with her. Both of them fired back at the stalker. The woman and her ex were both shot and transported to a hospital. She was in stable condition. Her stalker was in critical condition, and the second man was not injured. The stalker has been charged with a number of crimes: aggravated assault of a family member, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and our favorite, felon in possession of a weapon. If it was only against the law for felons to own firearms, okay? Obviously, the sarcasm is intended. No children were at the center at the time of the shooting. At 7:20 a.m., a news helicopter over the scene filmed video which showed the blood around the vehicle in the parking lot.
Not a lot to go through on this one, although I'm going to say if you're carrying if you've decided to make the decision to own a gun, fantastic. If you've just made the decision to carry that gun, even better. Please, 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 I don't believe it ought to be a requirement, but please do go get some training. Make sure when you point that thing and you activate that trigger, you send a round down range, that round goes where you intend it to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. It's so one thing that sticks out in my mind is that this would be classified as a school shooting.
Yes,
because it happened at a school facility, and there were two people were shot at. Two people were shot at and injured. So I guess it doesn't quite make the mass shooting requirements, but it wasn't far.
Yeah, and note, as I'm reading the story, both the current boyfriend or accompaniment and the woman were both armed. They probably both suspected somewhere, sometime, that the the stalker, the felon in possession, was going to be there. And, you'd never know when it's going to happen. So,
Yeah,
if you're unarmed, you're unarmed.
The bad guy, whether you know him or not, gets to pick the time and the place when he decides to attack his victims.
Yeah.
Now, going back to our earlier story, would this be a hate crime?
Well, in one sense, yes, because he was probably motivated by hate to shoot at her, but
Right.
under the law,
But-
probably not.
What if she was cheating on the second guy while she was with her first guy? So,
let me get a comment in here real quick. It's something we've said here many, many, many times, but C&T Designs at Arms says there is a lawyer attached to every round you send down range. So yeah, you want to make sure that the rounds you send down range go where you intend them to go, simply because you don't want to hurt an innocent bystander. I want to get one also, going back, this came in a little bit ago, but going back to our last segment, and that Illinois story, advertising to adults can't avoid children. Long before I could drive, I knew the camshaft specs for L88 and ZL1 427 Chevys. You know what? Long before I was legally old enough to be able to ride a motorcycle, I've been riding them since I was about, I used to say knee-high to a grasshopper, but honestly, I've been riding mini bikes since I was about 8. But I knew what the specs were for the original Z1000 Ninja. Before it was the ZX1100, before it ever became the Ninja. I knew specs for that, and I was very young and knew exactly what the top end 198 of those things was. How I still remember that after my stroke and 40 years, I don't know, but I do. So, advertisement gets to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. John, let's go to Amarillo, man.
The Amarillo police responded to a report of a shooting at 12:28 a.m. When they arrived, they met a 25-year-old man involved in the incident. The man told them he was driving on westbound I-40 when a silver vehicle pulled up beside him and began honking. The passenger in the front seat pointed a gun out the window at him. The 25-year-old man slowed down to get away from the other vehicle, but the other vehicle also slowed. Quote, due to the threat of imminent bodily injury or death, the victim retrieved his own weapon and fired at the suspect, striking the front passenger and the driver, according to a release from the Amarillo PD. The man pulled over and the two suspects proceeded to a local hospital. The driver, 20 years old, and the passenger, 17, were admitted with non-life-threatening injuries. A third passenger was seen on security footage discarding the gun from the vehicle in a trash can, which was later recovered. The third man has been charged with tampering with evidence. The other two have not been charged, but will be once discharged from the hospital. The victim was not charged and not injured.
John, I'm going to let you go with your comment first, and I've got a rather unique one to come.
Well, those of us of a certain age remember an old Charlie Daniels song, I think it was called Uneasy Rider. And he was going out west, and he said, after going on the southern route, he said, next time I'll go by way of Omaha.
Yeah. I wonder if it'd be strange if I went to L.A. via Omaha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys know he updated that song in 1988?
Yes, I do. It's
Yeah.
on my Amazon playlist. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, he had it was exactly the opposite the way he redid it. So anyway, yeah, two guys go into a bar they don't know is a rowdy gay bar.
Yes.
So.
Yep, it's pretty funny.
And yeah. Anyway, in all seriousness, what I want to do, what I recommend to everyone, if you drive a car, which is everybody, get a dash cam. I have one that looks both in and out, but even if you have one that just looks out, you can do what truck drivers, and most truck drivers know what this is you can do what's called a commentary drive. You start saying what's going on. If what's going on is beside or behind you, you start saying it so the dash cam records it. You don't just act. You say what's going on to cover your backside when that recording gets into court. But it would be a wonderful piece of evidence to have if you do get into a road rage incident, showing you slowed to 20 miles an hour on a freeway to try and get away from this person, and they slowed with you. And then you accelerated to 90 to try and get away from this person, and they accelerated with you. You made this exit, they followed you. If you get a dash cam so you've got that backup. You can get a dash cam off of Amazon. They start at about $25, $30. You can get a very good one for less than $100. So, any other comments we want to get to on this one?
I was just going to back up what you said about a dash cam. My brother-in-law was driving in St. Louis, and he had bought a dash cam, but he had not installed it yet. And he drove by the site, and I don't think he realized it, but there was a murder in process going on.
Oh.
And he says, I wish I'd installed it the day before. He got called by the police. He called them, but it was probably an X versus an X. Stopped the car and killed the woman in the car. And his dash cam possibly could have caught it. So yeah, you're absolutely right about a dash cam.
And I will say a dash cam, when I drove truck, saved my legal butt. I was driving in Chicago. It was in November, 32 degrees and kind of raining and raining a little bit, snowing, not snowing, but freezing rain / sleet. And car decided to take an exit at a high rate of speed, came around my right, shot forward, and tried to make the exit, realized, oops, it's slippery here. Maybe I should come back on the interstate. Didn't make it in time. Hit the embankment. The back of the car went up, turned, and the car landed broadside in front of me. No way in the world, even with a sports car, I was going to stop in time. And I ended up broadsiding this car. There was dash cam footage to prove there was nothing I could do. And
I remember that video very well.
Yeah. And the DOT had to come out and inspect the truck. They asked to see the video. The police that were coming to investigate the accident asked to see the video. I'm just really glad I had that. So,
No kidding.
all right, let's do this. We're going to jump off to our final break. We're going to hear from JPFO. When we come back, we'll tell you what we've been doing in media, and we'll shut the show down. We'll be right back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
Welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Normally I throw to Rob, ask what he's been doing on his Slowfax blog, but Rob isn't here tonight. I still do recommend you go to look at his blog at slowfax.wordpress.com. I know he will be writing in the very near future about the trip he's just finishing up now. He's just getting back to Louisiana. He went out to Arizona to go through the new faster training program out there and look for updates to that. John, you've been busy, and I seen a post even today that I know you're going to talk about that I got to say it's got me giggling a little bit too. What's up, man?
Well, as many people who follow the NRA know, Willis Lee was in line to be the next president of the NRA until he wasn't. Normally, the first vice president serves 2 years and then is nominated for president. In this case, the old guard decided they wanted to change the rules. They had only done it in the past for Charlton Heston and have Charles Cotton serve a third term. At that same time, they replaced Willis as first VP with former Congressman Bob Barr. Now that he isn't an officer, Willis is calling out the old guard for what I would call a drip campaign of posts and tweets. And it is getting interesting. I mean, Willis is acting somewhat like the scorned spouse in a bitter divorce. I mean, it's kind of the time to get out the popcorn. Just follow it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want. And there's going to be some new revelation, some new snark. I resigned from being part of this company. You don't need to know what it was. Well, whatever. I also want to address a myth. There is a myth going around Fairfax that I am NRA in danger. I am not. Anything I do has my name on it. In fact, I don't even know who writes NRA in danger. But I do find it amusing that they thought I was NRA in danger. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Well, I think, John, what may be happening with that is, look what happens whenever anybody who is not on our side wants to attack people that are on our side. They go after the NRA because the NRA is the biggest name in gun rights. I think maybe they be going after you because you are the biggest blogger that happens to bring attention to this. So they may think it's you because of that. Well,
going on a little further, this should be under the news, but I'm looking at the Attorney General of Washington, who seems to be doing the work of Giffords, Brady, Everytown in attacking the Second Amendment Foundation now. Mm-hmm. NRA's kind of on the ropes. Let's go to number 2, the guy who's driving us nuts with all the lawsuits. Let's try to screw up with SAF now.
Yeah.
I trust you guys saw the article that Petrolino put out about how they're going after Al. They've been going after Alan 2 years personally. So Alan can't even talk to his attorney about them going after him and going after SAF.
He can't talk to his accountants. Yeah. I didn't read John's, but I read the lawsuit that Alan has.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I would. I'm looking forward to that lawsuit going down as it goes down the road. I'm very hopeful for it.
Staying with the theme here, could all of this be a hate crime? All that Willis is doing? Right? We get the scorned spouse in the bitter divorce line. We got the hate crime. Willis is lashing out. Letting the bit. I love that you called it a drip campaign. I don't know if I've ever heard it called that, but I find myself noticing things that he puts out. I know, and obviously I see your articles as well. But yeah, Willis puts something out and lets it simmer for a couple days, and puts something else out, lets it simmer for a couple days.
Well, and I want to give, if you haven't seen John's most recent article about this, you need to go to onlygunsandmoney.com, simply because I want to bring this up and talk about it a little bit. It seems that the NRA is not consulting anybody in Virginia about the move away from Virginia to Texas. And that got released in through Willis Lee. It seems like one person is doing the decision making there, and it's nobody that's normally in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So let's Charlie, let's jump to you, man. What's new and what's coming out and what has just come out, all that good stuff.
All right. Well, tomorrow I have a Writing Shotgun with Charlie with Paul Markle, the student of the gun. And I've added something I've never done before. I've added a cold open where I just have a clip of he and I talking at the it was after we were done filming the show, and it's a little something we were talking about. It's like 20 seconds long, so I think it's kind of a, who knows if anyone will notice or pick up on it, but I thought it was a cool little clip that wasn't part of the show, but I thought should be included in there. Anyway, I also have I've been writing about the gun law listening tour that they have going on here in Massachusetts, and I've been writing and I've been putting those out at news2a.com. I think they're gonna. I wrote one late with the one that I went to last week, but I'm going to another stop tomorrow, so hopefully that'll be coming out later this week. And the Writing Shotgun with Charlie on Armed Lifestyle magazine came out last week, and again, that was about Beth Alcazar. So that is all of the stuff I think that I have going on. Paul, I think this was really funny. You had on Tom Knighton the other night, and you guys were talking about the gun law listening tour on Ghost Guns, and they talked about an instructor, Patrick Cook, who said he was very liberty-minded and very freedom-minded. And I am Patrick Cook. Don't tell anyone. I stood up and said, my name is Charlie Cook. I'm an instructor. I'm, blah, 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 blah. And they took it as Patrick Cook. I don't know how that worked out, but I was quoted as Patrick Cook, and I was watching the show, and Tom's like, yeah, that's the article I referenced. I'm like, yeah, I'm Patrick.
Are you sure? Is it not your evil twin?
And were you committing a hate crime while you were testifying?
I wasn't, but I'll tell you this. There was one. We talk all the time about how the anti-gun crowds talk about playing on people's emotions, and I see this more and more when I go to these. There was one woman that got all heated up, and she's like, I don't care about your stinking rights. If we can just save someone's life, I'm sorry it's an inconvenience for you. Another lady said that her stepfather was shot by a robber and a criminal, and he was shot 4 times, and she's like, he died at 55 years old or 51, and he lost the sight in his left eye. He had a couple of bullets lodged too close to organs, and they couldn't take it out, and she was really mad about things. And then after some people started talking common sense and pro-gun stuff, a lady came out and she's like, I've been a teacher for a long time, and I have to do, active shooter drills and hide, take the kids in the closet and hide in the closet until we get the okay and the kids are scared and screaming. They really do play on emotions. And I know this, but to see it in action is certainly something other than just knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, that's me.
All right. Before we shut the show down, I do want to remind everybody we do have a listeners group on Facebook. It is a closed group. You have to apply to get in. But search for on Facebook, search for Polite Society Podcast listeners. A lot of stuff goes up in there. I'm not there as much as I should be. And I got to be honest, I get notifications when somebody posts in there. This broadcast and all my broadcasts do go in there, but I don't spend a lot of time perusing what's in there. I do try to get there as often as I can. But if you want to check it out, just search Facebook for Polite Society Podcast listeners. And that is going to wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, Gary Ann, and Rob.
Until the next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, that is the end of the recording. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to plug real fast the show tomorrow that I'm going to be doing with Rob for The Bullet. I was just checking earlier, a couple stories that did not make the news today, but are probably going to make that show tomorrow. New Mexico's Democrat governor claims an AR-15 is an automatic weapon. We'll be talking about that one. That's an ARWR Hawkins story. And Dave Matthews pushes gun control. No one is coming for your guns. Nobody's listening to his music either. So... well, Charlie might, but, Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and thank you for the comments, and we're going to go ahead and shut this down. We will